At some point Charlotte must have fallen asleep, as the next thing she knew she was opening her eyes whilst still in the crib. She had dribbled somewhat whilst asleep and she felt a pain in her neck. She must have slept awkwardly. The nursery was still empty and quiet. With the lights turned down very low, it created a creepy atmosphere. Charlotte had no idea how long she had been asleep nor what time it was now that she had woken up. Charlotte slowly sat up and felt her hair, still in their pigtails, drop over her shoulder. She rubbed her eyes and heard the crinkling from her waist. There was a small silver lining in that she was still dry. She half expected her diaper to be used whilst she was asleep. She had no idea how much the television show she had been forced to watch had affected her. Maybe Charlotte's movement had caused some motion sensor to trigger, but it wasn't long after she started moving around the crib that the door opened up and let Nanny into the nursery. Charlotte looked at the robot through the bars with trepidation. She feared the nanny now. "It's time to go," Nanny said as she approached the bars slowly. "Go? Go where?" Charlotte asked as she pressed herself against the bars of her small prison. "To your new parents," Nanny replied simply. Nanny headed over to the wardrobe and picked out some clothes that she placed in the crib. Charlotte felt herself freeze as the reality of what was happening crashed down on her. This was it. She had failed to escape and now she was going to be taken away. Her mind could hardly comprehend what was happening. There must be some way of stopping this madness. I'm not ready," Charlotte almost whispered as a couple of bottles full of milk were dropped onto the mattress. "It has been determined that you are ready," Nanny replied as if they had run Charlotte's statistics through a computer and made a determination. Maybe they had done just that, Charlotte thought. But sheer panic was clouding Charlotte's mind. She couldn't get her mouth to work. She was panicking so much that she wasn't even emotional. It was as if someone had just switched off the emotions inside her. When Nanny had finished throwing supplies in the crib, she pressed a button and stood back as glass rose up just outside the bars of the toddler bed. Charlotte's eyes opened wide as she saw the glass on all sides. It was strong and looked like it would be even tougher to break the bars. When the glass had extended fully, a large steel ceiling started descending to the crib. Charlotte hadn't even seen it hanging from the ceiling before. Now she was watching as it dropped lower and lower until it rested on top of the steel crib corners. "No, no, no," Charlotte whined when she heard the unmistakable sound of screwdrivers and surmised that the crib's roof was now attached to the corner posts. There were small holes dotted throughout the steel ceiling which was letting air in. Charlotte felt like a rat in a cage as she pressed against all sides of the small box that now enclosed her. She was scared and looked out at Nanny, her enemy, her only hope of stopping this. "Nanny, I can help you get more people. I can do things for you guys. Please don't do this," Charlotte begged as she pushed against the securely fastened ceiling of the crib. Nanny didn't respond. Charlotte wasn't even sure it could hear her, although the small holes should allow some of the sound to escape the glass prison at least. Charlotte watched as Nanny pressed another button behind the crib. She jumped when she felt the bed suddenly lifted up slightly. Some wheels must have been brought out of the corners because Nanny began pushing the crib, which moved towards the oft-used door. Charlotte was trapped and just along for the ride as she was wheeled out of the nursery like an animal being transported by the zoo. Charlotte was wheeled past the bathroom and through the door at the other end of the hallway. She looked out the sides of the crib in wonder as she saw a huge room filled with people, mostly in white coats, milling around. Charlotte could see screens with other nurseries very similar to hers on them. She realized that she was just one of many people trapped at this facility. Laura. Charlotte's heart stopped when she saw one of the last people she had seen as a free woman. The woman who had seemed so distressed at the cafe heard Charlotte and walked over to her. The young journalist could see that Laura was wearing a white coat with the same stork logo that her Odyssey had. What was she doing here? "Hello, Charlotte," Laura said with a thin-lipped smile. Charlotte felt embarrassed that in a room full of professionals she was naked except for the diaper she had on. At least it was clean. "What's going on?" Charlotte asked as she hurried across her crib to stare out at Laura. "You've done very well," Laura said condescendingly as she looked at her clipboard. "You took to re-education very quickly and are much more obedient than we expected." Charlotte blushed. She thought she had resisted, but these people clearly disagreed. She wondered what other people did to resist. "What? What about your child?" "I'm confused." Charlotte was still feeling overawed by everything. Was this all some kind of sick prank? "Come on, Charlotte. You're smarter than that." Laura sighed and bent over. "There never was a baby. We don't ship babies out of here, we aren't monsters." "But you said," Charlotte was so confused. "We give the appearance of sending babies out because it helps law marks to us." Laura replied, "I lied, the video was faked and this was just my way of getting you to us. It's how I get paid." "Why me?" Charlotte asked. She felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Young, female, good-looking. You fetch a high price in our catalogue." Laura said, "We already sold you. Some are here months before moving on. Apparently your new owners like a bit of fight, so they don't mind you not being fully trained." Charlotte didn't know what to say. She was simply too horrified to really form any coherent response. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no voice came out. "Normally we capture random people, but we had a very specific need for someone like you. I think I deserve an Oscar for the acting performance I put on." Laura laughed. "I'm sure my bonus will make up for it." "You bitch," Charlotte said quietly in shock. She had been played from the very beginning. "We followed you for a week before I ran into you in the coffee shop. We had someone in your office give us information. Then we followed you all the way until you started climbing and our cameras did the work from there. Good luck." Laura said with a small smile. "Nanny, take her to departures." The crib began rolling again and Charlotte moved along the glass to keep facing Laura until the employee turned away from Charlotte and began examining another set of cameras.